Welcome back to another video, folks. Today's story will take you deep into the heart of the Wild West, where kindness was rarer than gold, and one good deed could change your life forever. It's the story of a homeless boy, a wanderer with nothing but the clothes on his back, who helped a wounded native girl across the mountains. But what he didn't know was that his act of kindness would bring 30 armed warriors to his doorstep the very next day. So saddle up, partner, because this one's not just about survival. It's about fate, loyalty, and a moment that would be remembered for generations. Snow drifted lazily through the narrow mountain pass, settling on torn boots that had seen too many miles. The boy's name was Eli Parker, and for the last 3 winters, he had walked alone. No family, no home, just the endless road stretching through the wilderness of Wyoming territory. At 13, Eli had already seen more death than most grown men. He'd watched his town burn in a raid, watched hunger chase him from one settlement to another, and learned that mercy was a rare thing in the West. Still, somewhere deep in his small chest, the fire of decency hadn't gone out. That afternoon, as he trudged through the snow, Eli heard something faint, a whimper. At first he thought it was the wind crying through the rocks. But then came a soft gasp, human, pained, desperate. Eli followed the sound and found her lying near a half-frozen creek, a native girl about his age. Her dress torn, her ankle twisted, blood staining the snow. She looked up at him with frightened, glassy eyes. When she tried to speak, the words came out in her language. But Eli didn't need to understand. The fear and pain on her face said enough. He hesitated. Helping her could mean trouble. If she was Apache or Cheyenne, her people might already be hunting nearby. If settlers found him with her, they might shoot him for treason. But the moment he saw her shiver, her lips turning blue, the hesitation died. He shrugged off his coat, his only coat, and wrapped it around her shoulders. "Don't move," he muttered. "I'll get you somewhere safe." He hoisted her up, her arm around his neck, her body light but trembling with cold. The mountains were merciless, but Eli knew a way through the lower ridge, a hunter's trail that led toward an abandoned trapper's cabin. The wind cut at his face. His fingers went numb. Twice he slipped and nearly fell. But every time, the sound of her ragged breathing pushed him forward. By nightfall, the snowstorm thickened. Eli stumbled through the dark, carrying her limp weight until, through the flurry, he spotted the faint outline of a cabin. He kicked open the old wooden door, coughing from exhaustion. The place was half collapsed, but the fireplace still had remnants of wood. He dropped her gently onto a pile of blankets, tore apart a broken chair, and struck a spark with his old flint. The fire roared to life, warm and alive. For the first time in days, Eli felt something close to comfort. The girl looked at him, eyes dark and fierce beneath her pain, and managed one word: "Thanks." Eli smiled faintly, rubbing warmth back into his hands. "You're welcome, miss," he said softly. As the storm howled outside, the 2 strangers, one homeless, one hunted, huddled close to the fire, unaware that by sunrise, their act of survival would ignite a storm of its own, because someone had already seen the smoke. When morning came, the snow had stopped, but the silence outside was heavier than the night itself. The mountains stood still, white and endless, and smoke from the cabin curled lazily into the sky. Eli opened his eyes to find the native girl already awake, sitting near the dying embers. Her hair was tangled, her dress torn, but there was strength in her eyes. She looked at him and spoke softly, her accent thick but words careful. "My name, Naya." Eli nodded, trying to pronounce it. "Naya," she smiled faintly, a small, tired smile, then gestured toward the window. "We go. Men come." Eli's stomach tightened. "What men?" Naya pressed a hand to her chest, then pointed east, the direction of the nearest settlement. "White men, bad." Eli didn't need more explanation. He'd seen what settlers did when they found natives alone, especially women. They didn't ask questions first. He helped her stand. Her ankle was swollen, but she refused to lean on him for long. Stubborn, strong. She reminded him of the wild horses that roamed these hills. Together they packed what little they had, a scrap of bread, Eli's knife, and his old canteen. The journey down the mountain was cruel. Ice cracked beneath their boots, Cliffs loomed over them, and each gust of wind felt sharp enough to cut skin. Naya winced with every step, but when Eli tried to help, she only shook her head. They didn't talk much. But something unspoken passed between them. A bond formed not by words but by survival. Hours later, they reached the river that wound through the canyon, wide, half-frozen, and mercilessly cold. They had to cross it to reach the plains beyond. Eli stepped in first, the water biting his legs like knives. He turned to Naya. "Come on, I'll help you across." She hesitated, the current swirling strong. "Too cold." "You go," he shook his head. "Not leaving you behind." For a long moment their eyes locked, then she took his hand. Together they waded through, the current fighting them every step. Halfway through, Naya stumbled, her injured leg giving out. Eli grabbed her tight, his feet slipping on the stones, but he didn't let go. When they finally collapsed on the far bank, both were shivering, their clothes soaked through. Eli coughed hard, his lips blue. "You're crazy," he muttered between breaths. Naya smiled weakly. "You too." They laughed, tired, broken laughter that echoed strangely in the quiet mountains. By dusk, they found a small hollow beneath a cliff and built another small fire. Naya tore a strip from her dress to wrap Eli's frostbitten hands, while he shared the last of his bread. For the first time in years, Eli didn't feel like a stranger. As they sat by the flickering light, Naya began to hum softly, a tune that rose and fell like the wind over the hills. Eli didn't understand the words, but they soothed something deep inside him. Then through the melody she whispered, "My father. Chief, Apache. He think I dead." Eli's eyes widened. "You're a chief's daughter?" She nodded slowly. "Raiders attack. I run. You find me?" He stared into the fire, realizing the weight of what he'd done. Saving her wasn't just an act of kindness. It might have changed the balance between settlers and the Apache. As the flames dimmed and the stars came out, Eli lay awake, staring at the night sky. Somewhere beyond the dark horizon, Naya's people were searching for her. And if they found him, a white boy with the chief's wounded daughter, they might not ask how he found her. They might just kill him for it. Still, Eli didn't regret it, because for the first time in his lonely life, helping someone had felt right. What neither of them knew was that far away, in the heart of the Apache lands, a group of riders had already mounted their horses, 30 warriors, and by dawn, their hoofbeats would thunder through the valley, headed straight toward Eli's door. Eli woke to the sound of thunder. Not the kind from the sky. This one was steady, deep, rhythmic. Hooves, many of them. He sat up fast, the chill morning air slicing through his breath. The fire had gone cold. Naya was gone. Panic gripped him. "Naya!" he called out, scrambling from the hollow, eyes sweeping the fog-drenched valley. And then he saw her. She was standing not far away, her figure small against the horizon, and behind her, emerging from the mist like ghosts of the earth, came the riders, 30 of them, Apache warriors, their faces painted in war marks, their horses restless, their spears catching the dawn light. The sight froze Eli where he stood. Naya turned, meeting his eyes. There was no fear in her face, only calm, as if this was meant to happen. Eli's mind raced. Had they tracked her? Did they think he'd hurt her? Would they kill him before she could explain? He could have run, into the woods, down the ravine, anywhere. But he didn't. Something told him to stay. The first warrior rode forward, tall, broad-shouldered, with feathers braided through his hair and an expression carved in stone. His horse snorted clouds of steam. He raised his hand, palm open, a silent command for Eli to approach. Eli swallowed hard, took one uncertain step forward. His boots crunched on the frost. The entire world felt like it was holding its breath. Naya walked between them, limping slightly but standing proud. She spoke quickly in Apache, her voice steady but urgent. Eli couldn't understand, but her tone, it was fierce, protective. Then silence. The chief, because Eli knew that's who he was, dismounted slowly. His shadow fell over the boy. He looked Eli dead in the eyes, and then without warning he dropped to one knee. Eli froze. Behind him, every warrior followed, 30 men lowering their heads in solemn respect. Naya turned to him, eyes wet, voice trembling as she translated. "My father says, You brought back his blood. You saved the life of his child. You have the heart of a warrior." Eli blinked, speechless. The chief stood again, placing his hand over his own chest, then over Eli's. "Brothers," Naya whispered. It hit him then, the magnitude of what had happened. A homeless orphan, once invisible to the world, now stood honored by a tribe of warriors whose name the frontier feared and respected. The chief motioned to his men. Two stepped forward, carrying something, a horse black as night, its mane braided with beads. They presented the reins to Eli. "A gift," Naya said softly. "For your courage." Eli's throat tightened. He'd never owned anything so fine, so alive. He looked at Naya, and for the first time she smiled fully. The sun climbed over the ridges, spilling gold across the land. The warriors mounted their horses again, and with a signal from the chief they began to ride away, their chants echoing through the valley. Naya lingered for a moment. "You come?" she asked. Eli hesitated, looking back at the small cabin at the mountains that had been his prison. Then he looked at her, and the open world beyond. He smiled faintly. "Yeah, I think I will." And as he mounted his new horse beside her, the wind carried the sound of drums in the distance, not of war, but of welcome. That morning, the orphan boy who once had nothing rode into the sunrise beside 30 warriors, and a friend who had changed his destiny. Years passed. The storms came and went. New towns rose. Railroads carved through the once wild land. But somewhere beyond the reach of smoke and steel, in a quiet valley guarded by ancient pines, people still spoke of the boy who walked alone. His name had faded from many memories, but his story had not. They said a white orphan once saved the daughter of an Apache chief, carrying her across the mountains when death had almost taken her. And when 30 warriors arrived at his door, instead of vengeance, they offered him brotherhood. In time, Eli Parker learned the Apache tongue. He hunted with them, rode with them, and lived beneath their sky. The chief called him Coda, meaning friend, and when the old man passed, the tribe buried him beside their own, a rare honor for an outsider. Naya grew strong again. Her limp healed, her spirit never broke. Together they watched the world change, settlers pushing closer each year, the frontier growing smaller. One night as they sat by a fire, Naya said softly, "Your people build fences. My people follow rivers. Maybe one day, we both learn to share the same sky." Eli looked at the stars, endless, quiet, eternal, and nodded. Maybe that's what we were meant to do all along. Years later, travelers crossing the same mountain pass would sometimes find a carved mark on an old wooden post near a forgotten cabin. 2 simple symbols burned into the wood. A mountain, and beside it 2 hands joined together. Locals said it was the mark of peace, left by the boy who once had nothing, but gave everything to help a stranger. And though the West changed and men forgot the names of its heroes, the story of that winter lived on, whispered around campfires as the legend of the boy and the mountain. Dawn crept over the ridges like a blade of light. Eli and Naya had barely slept. Every snapping branch outside felt like danger coming closer. Then it came. The sound of hoofbeats again, but this time they weren't distant. They were surrounding the cabin. Eli stepped outside, heart hammering, his borrowed coat hanging off his shoulders. 30 Apache warriors sat astride their horses, silent and watchful, their faces painted in crimson and black. At their center stood the same chief who had knelt before him days earlier. But something was different now. Behind the warriors, smoke rose from the lower valley, settlers' smoke. The mountains were about to become a battlefield. The chief dismounted and pointed toward the river trail. "White men come," he said in broken English. "Guns, they think you steal my daughter." Eli's blood ran cold. Granger again. The same ranchers who had called him a thief now wanted war. He looked around. The cabin, the forest, Naya's frightened eyes. He couldn't run this time. He had to make a stand. "I'll talk to them," Eli said. "They'll listen." Naya shook her head hard. "They kill you." "Maybe," he said quietly, "but someone's got to stop this before it starts." By noon, the settlers appeared, 20 of them on horseback, rifles slung, faces hard as granite. They saw the Apache line first, then Eli standing between both sides. "Boy!" Granger barked. "Get away from them! They're heathens, and they've turned you against your own kind." Eli's voice cracked but held steady. "They saved my life, Mr. Granger. They saved hers. Nobody's your enemy here unless you make 'em one." Granger laughed bitterly. "You expect me to believe that? You're just another stray mongrel mixing with savages." He raised his rifle. And that's when the Apache war cry ripped through the valley. The sound hit like thunder. 30 voices, fierce and raw. But instead of charging, the warriors rode forward as one, forming a wall around Eli and Naya. Spears lowered, shields raised, horses stamping the earth in unison. The ground itself trembled, yet no arrow flew, not a single shot fired. The chief rode to the front, his eyes locked on Granger's. He pulled a knife from his belt, sliced his own palm and raised it high, blood glinting in the sunlight. Then he pointed to Eli and in the settler's tongue said one word that silenced everyone. "Brother." The word echoed through the valley. It wasn't a threat, it was a truth. Granger's men hesitated. They weren't soldiers, just frightened ranchers who'd never seen courage like this. The sight of 30 warriors standing ready to die, not to kill, broke something inside them. Granger cursed, furious, but when he looked around, no one aimed their rifles anymore. Finally, he spat on the ground. "You're all mad." He turned his horse and galloped away. One by one his men followed, disappearing into the haze of dust and shame. As silence fell, Eli realized he was shaking. Naya took his hand. The chief dismounted, stepping close until his shadow fell over them both. He touched Eli's shoulder, then pressed the blood from his palm onto the boy's forehead. "Now," he said softly, "you are not homeless. You are Apache." The warriors raised their spears and gave a single shout that rolled across the peaks. A cry of respect, not war. Drums began somewhere deep in the camp below, and for the first time since he'd lost his family, Eli felt the earth beneath him answer back. The boy who had once walked alone now stood between two worlds, one that had cast him out, and one that had taken him in. And when he looked at Naya, smiling through tears, he knew which one was truly home.